record. All right. So yeah, Callie, welcome to Coding with Callie's meetup. People kind of start trickling in, but why don't you start with like a little introduction to the group?
Sorry,
Yeah.
just to interrupt. So how do I differentiate the Kellys? How do I Kelly Kelly one, Kelly two?
Good question. Maybe Callie B, Callie S. You could just,
Ah, great.
That
yeah,
works. That works.
yeah.
Only one
Um,
Callie will remain.
that's right. Battle to the death.
Yes.
Well, hi everyone. I usually have to teach people how to say my name, but I think y'all are pretty well acquainted with that. I am a senior software engineer currently at Uplift, recently at New Relic, and I am one of those career transitioners. So before this, I was a high school English teacher. Before that, I ran international service projects. So
Oh,
bring a lot
cool.
of very not tech skills into the tech world, and they helped me a lot more than I thought they would. We can talk about that later. But I live in the beautiful Valley in Virginia in the US, and I just very quickly ate some delicious Korean food to make it here on time. So my throat's burning a little bit, but it was a good time. It was worth
Yay.
it. Yeah, it's a
Very
little bit about
nice.
me.
Well, thank you for coming and thank you for eating your Korean food quickly so you could be
No
here. Please drink some
worries.
water.
It was just my planning was not very good.
I feel that. I was out with my friends and I was like last minute, like, oh, wait, I gotta
Yeah,
go, guys.
exactly.
So yeah,
Mhm.
so Callie's gonna talk to us about the soft skills that we need to be in tech. And I love this because I feel like whenever I'm talking about my journey, I'm always saying like, I just feel like it's like the tech skills, they're important, but I often feel like what stands out in interviews or what stands out when I get into a role is like the soft skills. So I love that you see
Mhm.
that too, and you're gonna kind of help us hone our skills.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess just kind of overview a little bit about why and some things that I've encountered that made me like so overly passionate about this is so I went to launch school, which isn't quite a boot camp, but it's also not a CS degree. But it's an online coding school. And when as most people do when they go through coding schools, you kind of have to wait till the end to feel like if it was all worth it because you're like, well, I don't know because I don't have a job yet. But at the end, was able to pass the technical parts, but what people kept commenting on, like the people interviewing me, were, wow, your EQ is super high, or like, wow, you're super good at working with people, or you're really good at like telling stories. And I'm like, thank you, but I don't know why that's relevant right now. And
Yeah.
so I kind of wondered if it was like a backhanded compliment where they're like, you're really cool, but you can't work here. But
Hmm.
instead, it was like all of these soft skills things that made people want to take a risk on me. And I think I say risk just because, I knew that I could do the job and people who had worked with me knew I could do the job, but I hadn't yet had the opportunity to prove that I could do the job. Right. So being able to talk about my experience in a winsome way, in a way that was like confident, but also humble, I think that balance is really hard for some
Yeah.
people. So yeah, because sometimes we're too humble or too confident. But yeah, I just found that really set me apart and got me interviews where literally I interviewed at this big company and I got an offer at the end, but there was three different tech interviews. Every single one, I did not fully solve the problem. Like I'm not like, oh, you kind of did, but like I didn't. And I was like, well, that's it. This
Yeah.
is this is the door shutting. But instead they're like, wow, I really liked your thought process. And I'm like, but I didn't solve the problem. But they're like, yeah, but I really like the way you went about it. And I know it's just you need to learn a few things, but your process was really good. And I can tell you'll get there. I'm like, oh, what the heck?
I love
So
that.
yeah. So in the job process, that was great. And then when I actually got onto the job, I was like, well, I'm glad that helped me, but now only JavaScript skills can save me in the actual job. But even then, just my managers, my managers' managers, my colleagues, different engineers, the different teams, product managers, all of them, they would just point out they loved working with me because I could translate things, like translate between a technical and non-technical person, or I help a lot of friends rephrase difficult messages, like to a manager or to a colleague that they're not getting along with. And I was promoted to senior in less than 2 years in my first production job. So
Yay!
yeah, thank you. Woohoo! And people always talk about soft skills versus tech skills. And actually, there's like this really rambly post that I may or may not put on LinkedIn about my like whole thoughts about it. But basically, like, I think, of course, tech skills matter. Like, you have to do your job for sure. But after that, like, especially your first and second and all the rest promotions, no one's in a meeting being like, you know what, we should promote Dan because he's so good at JavaScript. Like no one's saying that.
Sorry,
They're
Dan.
like, we should, I'm really pitching Dan right here because
I'm not that good.
yeah. That's right. Because you took a project and you made everyone work together and you got it over the finish line. And whether you did the technical nitty-gritty, like at that point it's kind of just if you're technical enough, it's good. But what makes people want to go to bat for you is because they know you can work with anyone, you can get anything done. So anyways, that's my sermonette to begin with, but
I love that.
yeah.
Did you find, because sometimes I feel like almost when someone compliments the soft skills, sometimes I can feel like a little insecure that like,
Yes.
why are you focused on my soft skills? And I don't know if like that's my experience being a woman in tech too, but like, do you ever feel like the other side of it too, where like this like imposter syndrome or like needing to like step up technically too? Or do you feel like you've managed to find like a cohesive, these are how all my skills mesh together?
Yeah, I think I felt pretty confident at New Relic, the job I just left in May, because I felt like I had showcased enough technical skills and I got enough done that it was clear it was kind of like a cohesive view of me, and they're just like, wow, because I don't think I'm a technical savant or like, wow, I'm like so good technically. I think I'm good, but I'm not like life-changingly great.
Yeah. Who
But my
is?
soft skills is what is like kind of, yeah, stands out. So, but starting this new job, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, especially, yeah, because the people hiring me, and again, I don't think they had a secret agenda, but they're just like, wow, you're just so good at your soft skills. And I actually left like crying voice notes to one of my friends who's a software engineer. And I was like, please tell me I'm technical. I'm technical, right? And so,
Aww.
yeah, I definitely have imposter syndrome. And I was just like, I'm pretty sure I'm technically competent, right? And so thankfully, name's Missy. Missy, you're the best. And she just was like, okay, let me recount to you the last 2 years of all the technical things you did. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. I forgot about that. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So absolutely. I almost feel like I guess it's imposter syndrome, right? But I
Mhm.
feel like I like just dazzle people with my talking skills.
Yes.
And then they're like, oh, I just like Callie. We can hire her and see what happens. But then they're going
Oh,
to
do
see
you
my
feel
code.
dazzled?
Yeah, no. And they're just going to be like, wow. I mean, we'd like to get drinks with her, but we don't want to like work with her.
Aw.
So absolutely get afraid of that. And yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I actually have a question for you, Kelly.
Yeah.
Me or the other Callie?
Well, see, that's why I asked the first
Callie B,
question.
Callie
I
S.
know,
Callie
I'm
B,
just
Callie
messing with
B.
you, Jay. I'm just messing with you.
All right. So here's the question, right? Let's say you are, let's say you are junior again, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden there's a senior on your team, but you are actually the project manager. Project manager. You gotta assign tasks to a senior. How would you seek this balance?
So
Right.
you're junior on the team and you're the product manager to a senior, and the senior's underneath you?
Correct.
Was this for
Okay.
your startup that you're kind of leading the
Well,
business?
that's my current situation.
Okay, yeah.
Got you.
So Jay is building a language learning application and he's managing people on the team.
Yeah.
Got
Jira.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think, this is where I can answer this question in two ways. One is I can be really like open and be like, yeah, there's so many different ways to do it. But instead, I'm just going to say exactly what I would do.
Oh, I love that.
And that is be very clear about what you do know and very open about what you don't. And that's kind of it. So it's not the exact same, but I used to run these international service projects and I was just running the logistics, but the people there were all like doctors and nurses. And I don't know how to properly put on a band-aid. So like I wasn't supposed to be there, but I was just in charge of the logistics. And so it's like, how am I supposed to tell a doctor with like 25 years of experience, like, oh yeah, this is what you should do? But I just made it clear, like, I have no medical expertise. I just have logistical expertise. And so when telling people what to do, I tried to make it as collaborative as possible without confusing them. Because if you make it too collaborative, then it's kind of like, so are you in charge or am I in charge? Like, who's making this decision? And in an attempt to be collaborative, you just get confusing and then people don't know when a decision is made. So you want to be clear, like, okay, are we voting? Like, is this a democracy? Or are you going to listen to everything they say, then you make the decision? Is the decision up to them? Is it partial? Like making those lines clear, but also going to them, and I would just say things like, yeah, we need to implement XYZ. I'm thinking this, but I also know that you have way more experience than me. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Right? Just
Ah,
owning the
cool.
elephant in the room and not being like, oh, we're just going to pretend that like it's not real. So yeah, that's kind of how I handle that.
Hmm. Like how I plan to do it is that I am gonna I'm gonna give give the uh give them the goal and then let them figure out the implementations
Yeah, I love
and
that. Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, not microman. I mean, even if you were their lead engineer, I still think that's a great approach. Of no one likes to be micromanaged. So even
No.
if you did know better
Mm,
than them, sometimes it's just better, especially if you have the right hierarchy and the trust in place of being exactly what you said. If this is the goal and you're not even saying how to format your files or what functions to put in, you're just like, the customer should experience this. Go forth
Mhm.
and implement. That just shows a lot of confidence in people, and they're like, okay, yeah. And if they have questions, they'll come to you. Well, they should. They should.
Yeah,
yeah,
one
yeah.
time I was like lead on a project and I had a junior like new to the team, new to the company come in. And so like I was like, oh, I need to provide extra support. So I gave
Mhm.
him like this is what the customer needs to be able to do. And then I also wrote like what my game plan would
Mm.
be to do it. And then we met and he was like, oh, I'm actually thinking I'm going to do it this way. And at first I was kind of like, I mean, I put all this work into my game
Yeah, I
plan.
outlined the steps.
Yeah, like I told you what the steps are, but you know what? He did it in a completely different way. It worked. There were no bugs. The customers
Mm.
were able to do what they needed to do. And like that was just the game plan he needed to do in order to get there. So yeah, I think definitely it was a life lesson for me to like step back, and I don't need to be like micromanaging and giving all the steps. People can implement things in different ways.
Yeah, I
Coding is
love
the right strategy.
yeah, I love that because it really takes a lot of self-awareness to do that, and almost like, I mean, you need to feel your feelings, but like, because when somebody does something you don't like, your initial reaction, well, maybe it's just me, is like, I will crush you. Like, I'm right and you're wrong. And so now I have to win this argument. It's gonna be messy. But then to your point of like, what was wrong with it besides it wasn't what you said? It wasn't like it was filled with anti-patterns or bugs, or you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
there's multiple ways to do it. And that's something I have to check a lot when if someone makes suggestions on my PR or they don't do how I outlined a ticket. I was like, okay, I'm irritated. Am I irritated for a good reason or just because I have pride? If I just have pride, I just need to choose to let it go.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I'm in a lucky spot now where everyone is like more senior than me. So like the
Nice.
pride is like gone because I'm
There
like,
is no
oh, you
pride.
want to give me 16 comments on my PR that was only like 4 lines long?
I deserve it. I
Yeah,
deserve it.
come at me. Give me all the knowledge, you know?
Absolutely. That's hilarious.
So yeah, so Callie, how do you want to kind of continue this? Did you want to go through? I know you had some slides prepared. Do you want to do that or do you want to keep taking
Oh,
questions?
yeah, so more good with just more of informal discussion, just kind of questions people have. I forewent the slides, but I'm happy to kind of give some frameworks of things that help me in interviews, can talk about how to onboard well at a company, and also just happy to do whatever works well
I
for
love
everyone
that.
else.
So yeah, does anybody have any other question? All right, go ahead, Isaac.
Hey, hopefully I have my volume working this time. Uh,
Yes, we can hear you this time.
so, like Kelly S's story, like taking it like she has a new person under her. You don't really know the new person because they're new. You don't know what they need. Because I've worked with people both like the one Kelly described, where we're able to figure out their own way, and people who would have really needed Kelly's step by step process to be able to do anything useful.
Mhm.
And sort of how do you, when you've got a new person, you don't know them, how do you suss out like, oh, which are they going to need me to put extra investment in them to make them useful? Are they better off like me letting them be more independent so that I
Mhm.
don't, make 10 books for them and they don't need it, or vice versa, ignore them and they do need it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've made the mistake of assuming I was a mind reader when someone was working under me, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, you clearly need this." And that was very painfully wrong. So, what I found is the best thing to do is to explicitly ask them that question.
Oh, I love that.
So let's say Isaac that you were hired under me and I needed to help you onboard and I had no idea anything about your personality, your preferences, your background besides like the piece of paper that's your resume, which doesn't say everything about you, right? So I would probably kind of call and just say, "Hey, Isaac." I'm being asked to walk you through different things. Now, by default, I'm an over communicator. So I'm going to want to tell you everything because that's how my brain works. I just like to tell you all the details and explain everything, probably too much.
It must
Now,
be
I
a
don't,
Callie thing.
yeah, I think it's a Callie thing. I don't want you to feel like I think you're dumb. I just talk a lot, and it's not because you're dumb, it's because I got a lot to say. So if you have questions, if you want to go based on your questions and you reach out to me, if you want me to give you a ticket with like lots of context, I'd love to just hear what you found is helpful and things that you think are either annoying or not helpful. So then I'd ask you to share that. And then something I try to say to people, whether they're below, beneath, or above me over and over and over again is I love feedback and I'm terrible at reading minds. So you don't have to make a compliment sandwich or tell me that you like my hair. You can just say, Callie, too long. The messages are too long. I don't have time to read them. And I'll be like, cool, I'll make them shorter. No worries. Do bullet points work? Oh, look, there we go. I like bullet points. Just helping people feel more comfortable because at the end of the day too, like you might even say something in that conversation, Isaac, in that first conversation and say you need something, but then you experience it and you're like, oh, I actually don't like this. Like this is annoying or it's not enough or it's too little or whatever. So explicitly asking them and making it clear that this is an iterative process. This is not the only time you're ever able to tell me what you need. This is just our starting place. We'll go from there. So, yeah, curious your thoughts on that. How does that sound?
Oh, that's a good answer. I
Yeah.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
You're hired, Callie. All
Yes.
right. Next question. What made you transition from teaching into tech? And this is from Emery.
Oh, yeah. So it was two separate decisions, meaning I didn't leave tech, or I didn't leave teaching for tech. I decided I was going to leave teaching. And then I was like, what the heck am I supposed to do with my life? And then I found tech. So
When
kind
did
of
you leave
everything.
teaching? I'm just trying to put this in context with COVID.
Yeah, 2019.
Oh,
I
okay.
started
Interesting.
to
Okay.
learn to code a month before COVID. Yeah, February 2020. Mhm.
Okay. All right. I'm going to want to hear more about that, but go ahead and
Yeah.
answer. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. So, I don't know, this may be a little overly detailed, but I'll share anyways. I already told you I'm an over communicator.
I love
So,
it.
love teaching. Think teaching is a wonderful thing. We're just severely underpaid and under-resourced, but no new news there. Um, and to teach the way I wanted to teach, meaning I really felt like I was helping the kids. I custom made all of my curriculum from scratch. So no
Good girl.
textbooks, none of that stuff. Just, working every waking hour instead. So I worked about 24/6. I did take one day off, but that's it. And I was long distance with my now husband at the time. Yeah, it was long distance, so I didn't have to take up time like having a boyfriend and seeing him or anything. So but then when I got engaged, I was like, heck, I don't have time for a husband or a social life or doing anything fun. And so I knew I either had to decrease the quality of education I was creating or just be okay. Like I couldn't do it. I couldn't not have a life. I couldn't decrease that. So other people are way better at managing their life, but as outgoing and friendly as I seem, I got about 2 hours of this, and the rest of the time I'm very quiet and alone, and I just can't do it. So I have 2 degrees in English. I didn't want to be a journalist, and so I was like, I don't know what else I'm supposed to do with my life. Uh, and I worked with an AP computer science teacher, and he helped me with something one day, and he just said randomly in passing, Callie, I've always thought you make a great software engineer. And I was like, thanks, Desmond. It's an unfounded compliment, but I appreciate it. Because to me, you have to be really good at math and science, and that's my dad. He's a mechanical engineer, but it's not me. And he's one who told me that one of the greatest indications of competency in tech is actually language skills, linguistics. It's not math or science. Totally true if you want to be a data scientist. We appreciate those people. But in general, software engineering is about problem solving and learning languages and how they work together. So he told me about some free resources like Free Code Camp, and I tried them. I knew it. Man, Callie, we were the same person. It's weird.
They shut the program down after I graduated because it's the world's most pointless degree.
Like did you do something to the teachers, Callie?
No, I just was the only person in like the entire 2 years of the master's degree that was in the program. And then finally they were just like, nah, this is not worth it. No one wants to study applied Spanish linguistics.
That is hilarious. I also speak Spanish. I don't have a random master's, but I speak Spanish.
Well,
Oddly
Callie,
enough, it was mostly an English master's. We just studied the syntax of Spanish.
Okay, yeah, that's useful. Yeah,
not at
Callie,
all. Yes,
Callie, you know what we have in common?
What's that?
language
Well,
acquisition.
Well, we are all linguistics. I'm sure I'll be soon be an English teacher, a Chinese teacher, a Spanish teacher, a Japanese teacher, and I should be linguistics.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now English. Yeah. Languages. Yeah. So he said that, and that kind of blew my mind. And he told me about some free resources. And honestly, this is kind of the person I am. I did the free resources simply to prove him wrong. To be like, I tried it and it didn't work, but joke's on me because I'm here now and I'm a senior software engineer. So Desmond, you were right. And he knows that.
Yay, Desmond.
Someone got proved wrong.
What'd you say?
Is that someone got proved wrong?
That's right. Someone got proved wrong. Unfortunately, it was not Desmond.
What's Desmond doing? Is he still a computer science teacher?
Yeah, he's still a teacher. And he told me recently, he's like, one of my greatest regrets is convincing you to leave teaching. I was like, shouldn't be so encouraging, Desmond. It's one of your greatest flaws. So darn encouraging and kind, supportive. So yeah, no, Desmond's wonderful. He's still a fantastic teacher, living the dream. But yeah, I really didn't think I'd be able to find, I knew I needed to get another career because like I need a job to live, but I did not know I could love another career just as much as teaching. I love it differently for sure, but just as much. Yeah. Because teaching, it's all problem solving, like debugging. It involves a lot of the same parts of your brain as how do I get this specific child to understand what a semicolon is? That is also a problem you have to solve. Very similar parts of your brain, surprisingly.
Yeah, I feel like crafting the perfect like lesson plan is very similar to me. It's like, okay, I'm gonna like write a test today and I want it to be exactly like this, you know, and like here's all the research I need to do before I can get started. And yeah, I feel like it's the same part of my brain that's working.
Exactly. All your students in a classroom, they're all edge cases. All of them. That's all it is.
I love that. What was your first language/framework that you were introduced to?
I was introduced to Ruby.
Ooh.
Yeah, Ruby is how I learned how to code. What a wonderful, magical language. But I have now abandoned my first love, and now TypeScript's my favorite, but it's okay. I also have this theory that whatever you're using most at one time is your favorite language, but people don't like to say that. But yeah, Ruby was nice. It was very expressive, very explicit, very clear, very close to English. So not weird like JavaScript.
How long did the transition to TypeScript take? And a lot of so the context of this question is a lot of the junior devs that I talk to are always like trying to like learn all of the things and feeling like, oh, well, I can't get a job in X if I don't know X as an expert, so I need to learn all of them. So what are your thoughts on, did you learn TypeScript because of work, or like how was the ramp up? Do you need to know everything in order to start a job?
Oh, I got strong opinions on that one.
Yes.
So the best thing to do is to learn one language super well.
I agree.
Preferably two, maybe, just so you understand that this is a language thing, not a programming thing, right? Like it's the same thing of when I learned Spanish, I understood English grammar more. When I learned JavaScript, I was like, oh, that's how Ruby works. Okay. Because JavaScript doesn't work that way. Because when you're learning to code, you're learning programming and a language all the same time. And so you conflate the two. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, if you use a little ampersand, that is like this magical thing in programming. Nope, that's Ruby. Nope. It's not a programming thing. So when you learn two languages, I think it's the best. But yeah, absolutely not. So I learned TypeScript. I learned Ruby the best, and I learned JavaScript quickly after that, in like a month or two. And then I learned TypeScript and like by doing Advent of Code a few years ago. That's how I learned TypeScript.
What's Advent of Code?
Ooh, so Advent of Code, it's a wonderful thing.
Okay.
It's a website, and a person, don't know their name, sorry, person, Advent of Code person, uh, makes a code challenge every day of December up till Christmas.
Okay, I was thinking like a Christmas Advent
Yeah.
calendar. But
Yeah,
okay, I'm glad I'm on
exactly.
the right
That's
track.
what it
Okay.
is. And there'll be like themes, like you have to help the elves. They need to like optimize, putting all the presents in and stuff. And it gets increasingly harder. I've never made it past day 17 because they get really hard and I just can't do it anymore.
Well, also at day 17, it's like basically Christmas.
Right, exactly. I just gotta let it go. So yeah, so I learned TypeScript by just doing those because knowing JavaScript really helps you learn TypeScript. It's just adding typing and it's a superset. But at my current job, which I started 3 days ago on Monday.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. I am for the first time working with Python and Django. And
How's it
I've
going?
already done four very small, but PRs because it's close enough to Ruby and Django's close enough to Rails, which I learned Rails. And so to me, that's why when you notice a little bit of everything, you're not really sure which bucket it goes into. You're like, one of these languages types, one of these languages is object oriented. I forget. But when you deeply understand a language, it's like your anchor point that is either the same or a contrast to every other language.
Yes.
So trying to switch around, and I totally get it, like if I know this language, then I'll be better at getting the job. Now, I'm sure there's companies who are like that. I don't like those companies personally because it's like, I don't know. It's the same thing of saying, well, if you only have experience with a screwdriver and you don't know how to use a hammer, like you won't know how to build anything. And I'm like, no, I can learn how to use a hammer. That's incredible. Like the problem solving, the debugging, the thinking through edge cases, the planning work, all of those things are completely transferable. So yeah, I say learn 1 to 2 things super well, and then you can learn Python in like a month if you need to, like me.
How would you approach interviews and like the job search process in terms of applying to jobs where like your strongest language is not on there? Or what if they ask you, specifically recruiters, what if recruiter asks you during a phone screen? How do you handle that question?
I just answered honestly. So when I interviewed at New Relic, thankfully I had some crossover in my stack. But I remember I was interviewing with a senior engineer and a software engineer too on the team, and they're just going through my experience. Like, yeah, I have experience with Postgres, okay, JavaScript, TypeScript, or no, not TypeScript at the time. They're like, yeah, what's your experience with GraphQL? And I'm like, I have 0 experience with GraphQL. And that's the end of my answer. So I can like say I read an article about it. I kind of know what it is, but you asked me if I've experience with it. I don't. I've never used it. Now I do because I use it all the time in New Relic, and I use that to get my job here. But I don't know. I am probably honest to a fault in interviews because at the end of the day, you're gonna be found out anyways. And yeah, that just annoys me. But yeah, being honest about stuff. You can also follow it up if you want to be incredibly winsome about it, where you're like, I haven't had the privilege of working with GraphQL yet, but something I was actually reading about it, and what I really like about it is da 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 da, and I look forward to doing da 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 da. Like, sure, you can do that. I have someone else do that. I think I felt a bit confident because in that specific interview, I'm like, I think they already like me. So I think we're okay. I think I can just say this.
Yeah, that's
But
fair.
if I wasn't sure, then again, I'm not going to lie, but I can still say, well, I do know this, and I look forward to exploring it in this way, or I'd love to know this better, or I'd love to hear how you enjoy using it. Just instead of it being like, no, I don't. And then it's just really quiet, and they're like, well, okay, next question. This is weird. So yeah, just kind of taking charge of the story a little bit there. But yeah, that's how I handle that.
Very cool. All right. Anybody else have any more questions they want to jump in with? I want to make sure I'm not hogging all of Callie's time.
No.
I also am trying to say your name as much as possible because it's kind of like I've
Callie.
never gotten to say my own name before.
Do you also know a bunch of calico cats named Callie? 'Cause that's all I know.
Yeah, it's like I think people think they're so unique when they
Yep.
are like, your name is Callie, my cat's name is Callie, like Calico.
yeah.
And I'm like, haven't heard that one before.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, calico cats. Yeah, all
Yep,
of them.
yep.
Thank
I think
you.
I got like one dog, and I was like, but
Oh.
not very rarely a human.
Yeah, very rarely a human.
Yeah.
I got a question, Kelly.
Yeah.
So let's say you're the interviewer, and
Mhm.
then you ask me if I know GraphQL. I say no.
Mhm.
Then my reply to you would be, what do you like about GraphQL? How does it compare against Mongoose? What are some of the pros and cons in using GraphQL? Does this, does this does this work?
So if you already say you don't know GraphQL and they ask you pros
Mhm.
and cons, like what should you say?
No. I'm asking them.
Oh, if you're asking them about,
Yeah.
you're asking, so if should you ask that in an
Yeah.
interview?
Should I ask that?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I think one thing to be a little bit more nuanced about it is it depends on how conversational your interviewer is. Some
Uh,
interviews, the person is there and it's very clear they just want to get through a list. They're not here to talk to you. They're not here to be your friend. They're just like, yep, here's the questions. And there's other times where, especially if it's an engineer, most engineers like to share their opinions and
I
their
see.
expertise. And so when someone you can tell a little bit, maybe in previous questions, or they will ask follow-up questions or share their opinions in between asking you things. If you have one of those kinds of people, I think that's a wonderful question to ask them. I've even used a question similar to that in actual coding interviews when I get stuck. Like there was some interview that there was some recursion problem and I couldn't figure it out. Like I did all I could, I walked through it, and they're like, yeah, then what else would you do? And I'm like, I just kind of paused and I said, well, I think I've reached the end of how I know how to do this. I'd love to hear how you do it though, because I'd love to learn from you. And I
Uh-huh.
genuinely meant it. Like I was like, well, I failed this interview, but at least I can learn something and bring it to another interview. But the guy interviewing me loved me for that. He's like, wow, she's so teachable and just like wants to learn. And I ended up talking to him about it. So if you were to ask someone, what are the pros and cons of GraphQL, engaging in them in conversation, and they say, oh, GraphQL is a lot better because it allows you to just query the right amount of information you want. And you could say something like, oh, right, because like in contrast to SQL, right? So you're engaging with information that you do have and
Uh-huh.
sharing that you can have this technical conversation, even though you have no idea what GraphQL does.
I see. Cool. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
great
like to
question.
treat every interview as a learning opportunity.
Yes. Great.
Which I think I say that I can say that from like a point of privilege too, that like, like it's not as big stakes for me in my last
Mhm.
interview process. But yeah, I mean, like if you flip it from, oh my God, I'm so scared, I have to get all this right, to I have a staff engineer who's been in the industry for 20 years, who's going to spend an hour with me and I can just learn from them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Just ask all your questions.
absolutely. I love that. Yeah. And because even in the other parts of the interviews, like the technical or just learning how things work, even just hearing what, especially experienced engineers, what they complain about, and I'm like, oh, I never knew that problem even existed. That's good to know. Like I'm learning about them just casually whining about their last meeting about like incident stuff. Where I'm like, okay, I didn't know. Yeah, it sounds terrible. I'm with you, Jeff. I'm with you. Sorry, Jeff. Like you can just be there with them, and you can even learn like the part of you learned, oh, like I learned a few interviews ago, I don't know a lot about database optimization because at my last company, I wasn't supposed to really, I don't really touch databases. It was a database team. And so I'm like, oh, people are going to ask me database questions. I should research that. So that's just, again, I'm learning even my gaps. And I did ask the person, I was like, yeah, I actually don't know how to do that. What would you do? I
Yeah.
did not pass that interview, which is okay. But yeah, still learned what I didn't know and learned from him too.
My entire interview process at HashiCorp was like, tell me about your experience doing this. And then my answer was literally like, well, I've never done that before. We don't have time to at my current company because of XYZ. You're like, that's not what we do. But like, if I had the time or if I could learn, like, these are the areas I would dive into. And like, that's why I'm excited to like talk about this opportunity and yeah, then push it back. Like, where should I start my learning at? Like, what advice do you have for like getting more into this realm and stuff like that?
Yeah, because even in those interviews, like my most recent one, when I had a take home and was going through it, and they were giving me feedback, and they just explained a few ways that I made my state and my React app way too complicated, which was true. It was a very valid point. And so it was funny because a few minutes after we finished the code review part, the interviewer, he even said, he was like, yeah, when we do the take home review, as long as you like just did the take home and it works, like I don't really care. It's more of I want to talk to you about it and see if you can handle feedback or if you get super defensive or if you can't even explain why you did something. And so here I am, spending 4 times the amount I was supposed to on the take home because I'm like, every little semicolon must be perfect. And he's like, yeah, I just want to talk to you about it and see if you're like easy to talk to. I'm like, well, dang it.
So the technical is in essence kind of a soft skill interview too.
Yeah, I think it absolutely
would
is.
you advise people to kind of approach feedback because it's just something that you are constantly going to have in this field? Giving and
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, in handling it in the interview and at your job is similar, but I'd say handling in the interview is you don't want to just be overly receptive and like, yes, absolutely. 100%. You're right. My code is total trash. You're right. And it's like, he didn't say that. Calm down. So like, you don't want to be like overly self-deprecating or something, or then it just looks like, you're just
crap, I
trying
feel
to go
like I
too
really
far.
did it wrong.
Yeah, you're right. This is so terrible. You shouldn't even hire me. Like, okay, turn it down. Turn it down. But instead, like something I do, this is just how I talk in general, is when I'm listening to people is I check my understanding by rephrasing what they're saying. That just helps me know if I'm actually hearing them right.
Yeah.
So when the interviewer and the engineer was going over my state management, so he's like, yeah, so this state right here looks a little complicated. And I was like, yeah, it does. My bad. And he's like, no, it's fine. But I'm curious, like, how would you fix this? What would you do? And so I was like, well, I think I would combine these two. I think I do this. And I feel like I should do more, but I don't actually know what to do after that. What do you think I should do? And he's like, yeah, so I think you should do this and this. I'm like, oh, I actually thought about that, but I don't think that'll work because doesn't React do this? Wouldn't that not work with objects? And he's like, no, it actually does work. You just have to do it this way. I'm like, oh, hold on. I'm gonna put that in my notes. I need to remember that. Thank you so much. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, what else? What else do you think? Right? So it doesn't even feel like he's giving feedback and Callie is receiving feedback. It's just we're having a conversation. So I think a big part is being able to respond, and you can ask questions because notice like in there I was like, I'm pretty sure you can't do that, but obviously this dude knows React way better than me and I very admittedly React is not my strong point. And so then he taught me something. It's like, oh, so you're saying if I did this and this would work? And he's like, yeah, if you did it that way. I'm like, cool. So it shows that I'm learning, that I'm listening. So I think that's a great way, and it's not just like I accept your feedback, thank you. Because even that's just kind of like, okay, well, I'm gonna go from there. So being able to engage in conversation and reframe it, or I went to another file and I mentioned it again. I'm like, oh, okay, so we could apply it here too, what you said. And he's like, yeah, exactly. You
Showing
could
you
change that in here
learned.
too.
Yes.
Yeah. So like I'm learning. So it shows like whatever I don't know technically, just tell me once and I'll apply it everywhere else. And so yeah, I think being able to approach feedback even when your feelings tell you something different, of this is just a run-of-the-mill conversation, and you ask questions and you receive it and you rephrase it back to them. Another thing I try to do too, he didn't seem any kind of insecure about giving me feedback, but when people do seem a little insecure or afraid, I make it very clear that I'm grateful, and I just say thank you so much, and I even explain why what they're telling me helps me, because I really want people to feel more comfortable giving feedback, even when it doesn't go as well with other people.
It's just such a good learning opportunity to
Yeah.
like have someone tell you what you could do to improve your code. And then I feel like it's kind of like a video game where I'm like,
Oh.
okay, so like on the
That's
last
a funny
PR in the
phrase.
first round, I got 16
No,
comments.
Callie, come.
Get somewhere and you're like,
Yeah. Yeah. Like, and it happened in my last job too, where like, the market is what it is. We all know what it's like. And I was just trying so hard to get a job, and I'm like, man, people just give me a chance. Like, I can do it. And then I got the job and I was like, wait, no, oh
can I
no.
do it?
What if I was wrong? What if I just have this false view of myself? And yeah, that's when I cried and asked Missy to remind myself I'm a good software engineer or not. But I think dealing other ways with imposter syndrome, one is having wonderful people like Missy in your life. You can ask them to remind you about yourself. Another two things, though, are I try to really get to know people who I think just really have it all. Like they just really know everything. And they don't know everything, but they know enough and they know a lot and they're really, really great. And then I kind of see behind the curtain where I'm like, yeah, she knows everything about Python because she's read like 3 textbooks on Python and has worked on it for 7 years. Have you done those two things, Callie? You have not. So you cannot compare yourself. So that Callie too. So seeing what it's like to be that person or how they got there and being like, okay, did you also have that experience? If you did it, and this is an unfair comparison, this makes no sense. And so that kind of helps me not do that as much with like the brilliant engineers that I worked with. I'm like, well, yeah, but they've been software engineers for 25 years. So yeah, I think it's kind of silly for you to compare yourself to them, Callie. And at the same time, so do that. And then also surrounding myself with people, both in tech and outside of tech, that are self-aware and will self-disclose their own feelings as well. So being around other engineers who I think hung the moon and can solve any problem, and they're like, yeah, I'm really not sure if I'm going to get this promotion. And I'm like, what are you saying? Like, of course you're going to get this promotion. You're the best person ever. You can do anything. But like, they're unsure of themselves. Or there was a podcast episode by, I forget his name, but sorry, Diary of a CEO. And he was interviewing like some like editor of Vogue or something. And they were talking about how they felt like an imposter. I'm like, bro, you're an editor of Vogue. I feel like you're fine. Like you got there, but they just feel like I don't belong. And so it kind of helps me rephrase imposter syndrome of, in my opinions, I don't know, I'm trying to say disclaimers. Imposter syndrome is not felt by people who are either not self-aware or they're not attempting anything difficult or excellent. And so in order to excel, you have to do something that was previously beyond you or previously too hard for you or previously didn't come to you naturally. So the fact that you feel imposter syndrome is showing that you can feel your feelings, which is very healthy, and also that you are doing something that your brain is like, this is new. We haven't proved to ourselves we can do this yet. And the only way to prove it to yourself is to freaking do it. And so imposter syndrome is like one of those backhanded compliments where it's a good thing, but it's a painful thing. So when you're feeling like, man, I don't know if I'm the smartest person in this room, that's great that you're not. You're about to grow so much. If you're just like, oh, I know all there is to know and this is so easy for me, then you're doing a whole lot of nothing. So imposter syndrome, though it still makes me anxious and makes me cry, I try to reframe it a little bit of I'm doing the things that other people are too scared to do, or I'm doing the things that are going to make me better. And it's because I feel imposter syndrome and I continue, that's actually what makes me excellent and not just be too scared to try in the first place.
I love that. Also, sorry I went out there, guys. My internet went out.
All good. I got a really fun screenshot to show you later.
Oh, I'm excited. I actually heard you as I was like, as my
No.
Zoom was going, like, I have to get a screenshot. I'm like, dang, I want to see what that is.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. Oh yeah. Mm. Yeah, and Isaac, it's so true. Seeing people pairing with people and they're like, oh yeah, I fall into that. That's also a great way to learn people's super ninja secret shortcuts is to pair with people where they're just like doing something real quick. I'm like, wait a second, wait. How did you find that without touching your mouse? What like secret voodoo magic did you just do? Like there's like, and then this, and then it makes everything work. Yeah, I found so many shortcuts just by watching people pair. Yeah. I also worked with someone who, no offense to anyone who does this, but drives me a little batty, where they literally right clicked and then clicked copy and then right clicked and then pasted. I thought I was going to die. So everyone, please use Command C, Command V. It's a very friendly command for everyone.
I'm trying to think that through because when you first started saying it, I was like, sometimes I right click, but then when you went to like copy and then paste, I did draw my line there.
Yeah, that was a hard day. That was a hard day for me.
Like I right click to get Copilot, and when
Okay,
I'm
that's
pairing,
allowed.
my
That's allowed.
partners would be like, it's Command I, and I was like, I don't like doing it that way. I like to right click and then go to Copilot and have it go to explain. Thank you.
That's
Used to
okay.
be
That's cool.
all Control C and Control V, and then I realized that on command line and some PowerShell things you can't Control V; it won't take it. So
Oh,
I'm
no.
like, then I learned you can do Shift Insert, and also you can right click on most things just to paste.
Oh, okay.
I
Well, that's good to
leave an
know.
Easter egg in every one of my challenges for Dan because I'm too lazy to learn these things. So I will just speak to the camera while I'm recording and be like, can someone figure this out and let me know what the command to do this is? And this
Now
time
I
someone
like,
did, and
I'm
they're
on
like,
it.
it's at the
I'm like, oh,
bottom of the screen, Callie. If you would have just looked at the bottom of your terminal, I would have told you.
that one actually wasn't me. I think that was Jimmy. But
Yeah, you didn't pick up that Easter egg, but it did crack me up that was my level of laziness, that it was literally written on the screen while I was asking a recording to tell me what to do.
Oh, hilarious.
So you mentioned, and maybe I missed this too, but you mentioned in the beginning about like onboarding and the soft skills in that. Did you guys get to talk about that at all?
No, I don't think so. I think I see one question,
Oh.
Kate from Casey, about a little bit. Did you find your company gave you space and time on the job to ramp up? Or do you have to do it all on your own time? So I'll answer that and then kind of answer the more broad onboarding stuff. So thankfully my company is super great about giving me time to learn Python and Django and everything else. I think I also, again, just because I have really good foundations, I can do it pretty quickly. Where like next week I'm gonna take on a whole project by myself, and it's gonna take me way longer than if the project was in TypeScript and React. But I'm like, yeah, I'll figure it out, because I think that's also another thing that's great when you learn at least two languages is you think about the implementation based on the algorithm and not so much the code of like, this is the logic of which I need to implement. And then you're like, okay, I'm just need to Google how to do this in Python. And then I just put it in there, right? So there's more nuance, of course. You learn more how different code things work together for sure. But I'm not thinking, how do I do this in Python and Django? I'm just like, how do I do this, period? Like, what are the logical steps that are code agnostic, language agnostic, framework agnostic? And then I can be like, oh, okay, well, in Django, I should adjust my logic a little bit this way. So I think that's something that helps me to use it way earlier than I feel confident using the language itself, but I still can use it just because I'm like, my logic's the same. So yeah, my company's been super great about that. And that's a great question too, even to bring up in the interview process. I'd recommend bringing it up closer to the end of the process, meaning once it's more like closer to an offer. Definitely be open at the beginning. I don't know this language, I'd have to learn it. But kind of at the end when you're working out the logistics of, yeah, so what does it look like as I onboard and as I learn? Just because kind of more the tenor the conversation takes near the end of interviews. Now, that said, with onboarding, some companies have really explicit, structured onboarding programs. Love those people. Fantastic. And they might assign you to an onboarding buddy or some other company appropriate nickname they give those things. um, but I also have had friends who created their own onboarding program. Like went to a startup and there was nothing there. And so they made like a whole document of this person will be assigned to me. This is when I'll check in with them. This is how they'll help me. These are the projects I'll use to on ramp. Like they did the whole thing, which I mean, that's a great way to stand out. Definitely do that. Um, but I think in general, like in broad sweeps, whether there is an onboarding program for you or there's not, what really I find sets people apart in onboarding well is not if they work past their hours. Please don't do that. Go to bed. Don't do that. But is they try things for a certain amount of time, maybe like an hour of banging their head, 30 minutes maybe. And then they document what they've tried, they document their questions, and then they either get on a call or they send it to someone over Slack. It's the things that mess people up are the not trying of like, oh, I've never seen that before. Can you walk me through it? That's what Google's for, my friend. Google will walk you through. Please do not ask someone an intro to Django. You can ask them, you need to ask them business logic stuff because that stuff's not on Google or ChatGPT. But how to make a function that does this, or how to optimize this, or how to write a test that tests this, the internet is there for you. And so people want to help other people who can clearly help themselves because you don't like, I don't even want to say I don't think there's a quota of questions you can ask of like, oh, this is your limit. But there is a quota of, did you even do anything? Questions you can ask before people just get annoyed. Where they're like, you didn't even open the document. You didn't bring down the code. You didn't try to run it. Like, I don't really want to help you. Do all that first. And then, so trying yourself, but then also when you're stuck, don't just say, hey, I pulled down the code, doesn't work. Can someone help me? What the heck does that mean? Is like, what doesn't work? Did you try like yarn develop, npm install? Did you get a glitch from GitHub itself? Were you running the test and one of them failed? Like, what is happening? So trying stuff and then saying what you tried and then saying exactly what you got stuck on. And even better, if you can give I think XYZ might be happening, but I don't have the admin access to check to see if that's the problem. That's even something I did today. The CTO of my company is out. And so I was trying to debug something, but I'm pretty sure the answer is behind an admin thing that I haven't gotten access to. And so that's what I said at the end. I'm like, I'm pretty sure the answer is back here, but I don't have access to it. But once you give me access, I'm happy to continue debugging this. So communicating that and doing that in everything, the small things, the big things. And then also balancing like, and this is a little bit personality dependent. So, your mileage may vary, but having a balance of when you come in, you need to listen what other people like I know you really think we should rewrite that whole application in TypeScript. I do too, but you just got here and you don't know how this stuff works. You don't know all the suffering we've been through. So you coming in and just saying all these things we should change is kind of like, first of all, shut up. Second of all, like it just makes people not want to listen to you. So definitely listen a lot. And at the same time, it is good to have an opinion about stuff. Just don't be super dogmatic about it. Everyone's been trying to solve this bug for the last 3 months and you have fresh eyes. And so being open that you don't know, but still asking the question is great of, listening to 3 engineers talk about how they can't figure out why this isn't updating. And you could say, hey, I'm super new here and I just pulled down the code today. So please feel free to tell me to be quiet. But I noticed here the Redis is updating here instead of where I thought it would. Like, is that related or is that like totally off base? And either you will learn something and they'll be like, oh, that's actually about this other thing. Or they'll be like, wow, we've just been waiting for someone to give us this wisdom. So interacting, but also being like, yeah, I don't know anything. I'm just learning.
You're
But you do have
basically
good
like a human
opinions.
rubber ducky.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that talks back sometimes.
All right. Do you
Yeah.
have time for one more question from Jay?
Yeah, I do. If
All right,
y'all are
Jay,
good
go
hanging
for
out.
it.
Yeah, hi. I may have missed it. But how'd you broke into your first job?
Yeah, so breaking into my first job at the end of launch school, it's somewhat structured, but basically they put you in groups and they're like, find a problem on the internet and solve it. And we're like, what? And they're like, you heard me. Find a problem on the internet and solve it. You're like, that sounds terrifying. And it was. And so I made
Ooh, are we
this.
getting a demo? I love an impromptu demo.
Oh yeah. There's the website. So it's
That sounds exciting. Let me see what it is.
tryhorse.com. Yeah, so basically we find things that are gaps or needs in the observability, not in the observability, open source space. We chose observability and we just make it. It almost looks like a startup a little bit, but it's not. So what's great about Horus too, which is like a whole other thing, but we probably don't have time for today, but if you go look at the code, I invite you, go look at the code. You'll see that our
Do you
personal,
use open telemetry?
yeah.
Okay, cool. I feel like I'm
Like,
having a side conversation with you.
oh, yes, absolutely. You
Sorry.
should do it. Open telemetry is a bane of my existence. Freaking
That's-
hate
yeah.
that thing. But I know how to use it, so I can definitely help you. I
Okay,
suffered.
yeah, perfect. I'm actually on the observability team
Wait,
at HashiCorp. And
Wait, sorry.
yeah, go ahead, Jay.
So this look like MIT project. Well, can you tell me what this is about?
Yeah, so what we did at the end is it's I think the best way to figure out what it really is to read about it, but just more of the overarching thing is we used Horus to prove that we knew how to figure stuff out and code and solve a problem.
Mhm.
So when you look at the actual code of Horus, it is not impressive. Like I think my personal like Postgres secrets are still in one of the files. So my password is 12345. Joke's on you. So like it's just there. But all we did was we instrumented a node agent, like a node package, our own npm package called a Horus agent, and that exported to a node backend that put stuff in a database, and then we made a custom UI with Next.js. That's it. So all those things itself are, I think it's just very simplistic, especially the code. Like the whole backend is one file and one function. Like it's so terrible. The code is terrible. It's so awful. Callie S will teach you better than me. So, but the reason it's impressive is, in my opinion, is because we deeply understood the problem of observability and microservices, and you don't want to pay someone like New Relic or Datadog tens of thousands of dollars a month to do this, but you also don't want to have to patchwork your own stuff because, as Callie S can attest, open source observability is a headache to work with. And it's like, does this work with this? It does, but it half doesn't. There's no documentation to tell you. You just have to find out the hard way.
Yeah, like,
And
what's the
so-
format I need to send this in? No one knows.
Exactly. You'll never know until you use Postman and just figure out what it looks like. So a big use case is the ease of use. We're just making people's lives easier. So in short, we made TryHorse, made the actual app, we made the case study, and that's what I talked about on interviews, is that I made Horus. So New Relic was my first production experience. I never hid that from people. I never pretended Horus was a startup or that I worked at Amazon or something. Like I was just like, yeah, but this still, it goes above and beyond a bit of certain, like, I don't know, when you're doing a tutorial and you're just copying the instructions, which everyone needs to go through that. You absolutely have to do that. But after that, you have to prove that you can just take a vague problem and solve it. And that's what really, I mean, this is like senior engineer level work. That's what I do more as a senior now, where it's just like, yeah, customers need this and this and this, and you just have to figure it out. So
Wait, this is awesome. Then that's exactly what I'm doing.
great job. You're on the right track.
All right, cool. I think I just found my favorite Callie.
I'm a little offended, but I don't disagree.
Wait. The thing is, you don't know if that Callie is you.
No, it's okay. It can be Callie B. That's fine. Marcy would like to know, what hackathon experience equate?
That's a good question. Honestly, I've never participated in a hackathon and I am woefully ignorant of hackathons, so I do not feel equipped to answer that question. So maybe.
My personal opinion is that, and what I love about Callie's project is that I'm sure it took you guys a long time to plan this and develop it and iterate on it. And that's
Yeah.
the biggest thing I see, I guess, like missing the gap with a lot of like people straight out of boot camps is you spend like a very small amount of time working on code and you don't like productionize it and like,
Yeah.
and you don't take the time to like make sure these features work. Are they tested? Can
Yeah.
people use this? And so I would say, Marcy, take whatever you did from your hackathon and keep working on it. Okay, yeah, 8 weeks each. I would say that that would be good
Oh yeah.
experience. But yeah,
Yeah.
take it like, is it deployed? You know what I mean? Like, can you use an observability tool on it? You know, can you talk about all of these different areas that you would have to do at work? Can you talk about that in your personal project? And I would say that your personal project counts as
Yeah.
experience.
Absolutely. And I love the points too of just like, it's can you talk through it? That's really the big thing of can you spin the right story? Can you explain the pain point that you were meeting? Even though you don't have literal customers, you need to imagine them as your friends and they are in pain and you are fixing their pain. Of like that's really what it's about. And even for ours, I think it was, I'd have to think, I think it was 8 to 10 weeks. Even what we did from idea to execution. Now we were working like 12 to 14-hour days sometimes, which I do not recommend. But that's just kind of the time allotted for it in the curriculum. So yeah, really making it customer centric because that's the thing too is people think like your code needs to be next level, and every once in a while you'll have someone come in and be like, show me your code. I've never had that happen, but other people have it. But you need to be able to talk like an engineer, and engineers don't talk about like when they actually work with customers, they're not just like, look how shiny this little clever piece of code is. They were like, I solved this problem for a customer. So making your product customer centric, user centric, architecture, big problem centric, that's how an engineer thinks and
Yeah.
talks, and that's what sets you apart.
If you haven't gotten to the point where you have to be like, oh crap, I have to throw all of this code away for a huge refactor because I didn't design this well enough. And like now I'm hitting all of these problems with like how I hand data back and forth, right? Like those are the things that are great to talk about in interviews because, and like,
Absolutely.
it's not bad to say like, oh, I messed up, right? But it's good to say like, I didn't know how to do this and like now I do, and now I'm still learning, and
Mhm.
also being able to point out like, you know, the thing where people say like, I didn't know what I didn't know. If you can just
Yeah.
get to the point where you do know what you don't know, you're already
Yeah.
kind of like most of the way there to like talk intelligently in interviews. Like,
Yeah.
I've deployed, but I haven't had more than 10 people use my website, but this is what I would do to learn how to scale my website, type of a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And like one of the things that impressed what was he, a principal architect engineer at New Relic? He was in one of my interviews. I felt super insecure about this answer, but he was super impressed by it. So they asked about open telemetry, where they talked about, tell me about a time you like overcame a really big technical challenge. And I was like, well, my technical challenge is open telemetry,
That's a huge one.
which New Relic owns, by the way. And
Oh.
so I was like, yeah, it's very difficult to use. I feel like the documentation starts at level 5 and I'm at level 0 and there's no
Mhm.
way to bridge that gap. And so like, so what did you do? And I'm like, well, I found, they'll have in the documentation, they'll have working examples of code of like, oh, just copy this. No idea what it does, but just copy this into your code and it'll work. So I did that. And then I would just randomly delete lines and run it
Yes. I
and
do
see
that
what
all the time.
happens.
Yep.
That's what I did. And the principal architect was like, that's perfect. And I'm like, really? I feel like that's the most hacky way to learn anything. And he's like, no, most people just think if they just look at the code hard enough, they'll understand, but they
No,
make
you
so many
add a console
mistakes.
log every
Oh
line
yeah.
and you're like, that's exactly what this line. And now you can just tell Copilot, please explain this line of code
Yeah,
to me. You know, you
absolutely
start out
right.
with the whole function, explain the function, and then you go line by line through the function.
Yeah,
So you know what it's doing.
absolutely right. So yeah, just figuring stuff out. And again, that wasn't a prepared answer. I was like, you want to know how I learned open telemetry? This is what I did. If you don't want to hire me, that's fine. But this is how I learned stuff. And it ended up being impressive. And I think it's because it's real. it's what I actually did. I didn't just try to polish an answer and try to sound super great. I'm just like, this is how, and it's how I still do stuff to this day. In my new Django stuff, I'm like, what does that do? I commented out. Oh, it gets that error. Oh, okay. Just that's it.
I love that. Well, thank you so, so much for joining us today. This was one of my favorites. I feel like this was super informative, and I don't want to be like all your interviews where like, you're such a great speaker, but you're just such a great speaker.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Now, y'all are a good time, and I super appreciate the questions, and yeah, being able to hang out with y'all is super great. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Do you have anything you want to plug before we go?
I should always be more prepared for this question. Let's see. Well, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm the one and only Callie Chara. So you can find me there.
Callie.
Yeah, Callie Chara.
Well, I hope it's okay to connect, Kelly.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to. Feel free to reach out, connect. Also have a podcast called Majority of Work and talk a lot about these kinds of things, especially
Cool.
how to pass interviews, how to get promoted, how to give and receive feedback well. And always super open to podcast like recommendations. And then also take when people just need some extra help in the interviews or different stuff. I do some coaching and mentor on the side. So just reach out to LinkedIn, like on LinkedIn, happy to connect.
Yay. Well, thanks so much. And shameless coding with Callie plug, but Dan is going to be doing our next deploy in public cohort. He's going to be facilitating it. So it's going to be more of a community experience. And we're also going to be doing another build in public challenge, which will be basically the project planning tool. So if anyone wants to sign up, the cohorts start August 8th, and you can sign up from now until then.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all again, and I'll see everybody next week, hopefully.
Bye.
Bye.
Kelly, thank you for the meeting.
See ya.